Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavat Padam Shankaram Lokashankaram. So in the last class, we were studying the 118th verse of the Vivekachudamani, where we found that in our spiritual journey, when we start living a life of contemplation, it's not possible to lead a life of pure sattvic temperament. Because at the beginning we have to endeavor. So the sattva is mixed with rajas. The question of self-effort is there. But when with the self-effort we find that though there is a preponderance of sattva, but still it is tinged with rajas. But gradually, as we become adept, as in the Bhagavad Gita we find the two terms. One is Aruruksha and another is Yoga Rura. Aruruksha means one who is an aspirant, who is trying to ascend to the apex of the yogic culmination, practice culmination. So he is called Aruruksha. He is ascending. Means, the prefix A is used in the sense of accomplishment, that I start as a novice and till I reach the goal I continue. So it is in sense of encompassment, the prefix A is used. So till I reach the goal I continue ascending in the spiritual ladder. So it's aspirant. And the one who is established in yoga, he is called Yoga Rura. So the one who is Yoga Rura, he is of that pure sattvic temperament. As in the modern psychological term, we can say that his skills has met the challenge. That at the beginning we find, what to speak of spiritual journey, even in the field of performing arts, we find that there is a tremendous engrossment for an adept in the performing arts. They can enter into a state of deep focus. But it has taken time. How much time? Till his or her skills was to meet the challenges. Once it meets the challenges, now the thing becomes, the practice, the performing arts becomes spontaneous. And in that spontaneity, the one who is practicing that enters into a state of flow, where he is fully focused in what he or she is doing without any self-effort as such on its part. It has become something as spontaneity. It has become something which is habitual. The same thing happens in the spiritual journey. That through our effort, a time comes when all the so-called spiritual traits becomes something habitual. It's spontaneous. There is no question of effort. Whatever that person does is something which speaks of his pure sattvic temperament. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say very nicely, that an adept dancer never has false steps. In Bengali, that's what he's saying. That when you become an adept dancer, then you did not have to cautiously, with full consciously, you did not have to go on putting your steps on the rhythm of the music. You may be busy with something else, but when the music is being played, you will find that for an adept dancer, his feet always falls in the rhythm. That has become something spontaneous. So when you reach that spontaneity, what are the traits, spiritual traits, that finds manifestation, that manifests through that spiritual aspirant? That has been enumerated in the 119th verse, which we are going to study today. So what it says, Vishuddha Sattvasya Guna Prasada Swatmanubhuti Parama Prashantihi Triptihi Praharshah Paramatmanistha yaya sadananda rasam samrichati. So Vishuddha Sattvasya, the traits of pure Sattva, Vishuddha Sattva. Vishuddha means pure, Vishesha Rupe Shuddha, which means without even a slightest tinge of impurity. That is Vishuddha. Vishuddha, Vishesha Rupe Shuddha. So that type of purity of what? Of the Sattva. So the traits of this pure Sattva. What are the traits? The first is Prasada. What are the guna? What are the traits? The guna means here the traits. The first trait is Prasada. This is cheerfulness. And then Swatmanubhuti. The realization of one's self follows that cheerfulness. And then Parama Prashantihi, supreme peace. Triptihi, contentment. Praharsha, bliss. Paramatmanishta, steady devotion to the Atman. Yaya Sadananda Rasam Samrichati. So by which the aspirant enjoys everlasting bliss. So this everlasting bliss is a very important thing. In our worldly way of living, the bliss is not everlasting. We do have some happiness when our desire is fulfilled, but it is very momentary. How momentary? As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, it is just like the falling of water on a red hot pan. It immediately evaporates. So Sri Ramakrishna is saying that our happiness is that momentary. So, but we all desire for that happiness which shouldn't be in any way interrupted. As our scripture speaks of, Taila Dharavat, just like the pouring of oil from one vessel to the other. You find because of the viscosity, that when oil is poured from one vessel to the other, there is no interruption. It has a very constant, continuous flow. So your happiness, we all desire for that type of happiness. No one wants suffering. The only common goal of all, the entire humanity, of all the beings, of all animate beings is this Sadananda Rasa, that uninterrupted bliss, as has been spoken of very precisely in the scripture. That what's the aim of life, of any animate being? Atyantika dukkha nivritti parama sukha prapti. That we don't want dukkha, atyantika. From its root we have to annihilate it. And parama sukha prapti. That we want that bliss which is uninterrupted. So whatever may be your professions, whatever may be your belief, that's the common thing. And that has been ascertained here, that when we attained the state of Vishuddha Sattva, then all the traits which follows, that at last results in what? Sadananda Rasam, a bliss which is uninterrupted. Samrichati. We reach that state. He enjoys that state. So, now we will come to all the traits which has been spoken of. We will find that all these traits follow one after the other. This, as has been indicated, they subsequently, as we develop Vishuddha Sattva, the pure Sattva, one after the other, these qualities like Prasada, Swatmanubhuti, Parama Prashanti, Tripti, Praharsha, Paramatmanishta. So these qualities, one after the other, in sequential manner, they follow. Now, what actually is Vishuddha Sattva? In a very simple way, let us try to understand that in our spiritual journey, when in the beginning I try to keep my mind calm, for getting the tranquility of the mind, what I do, I sit for meditation. And for the first time I realize how turbulent my mind is. Previously I was not bothered. I was quite happy with my way of living, with all the distracted modes of my thought. I thought that's the way of life. Now when I take the resolution of having a contemplative life, I sit for meditation, I find my mind is restless, extremely restless. And with a lot of effort, if I somehow am able to attain a sort of tranquility, then what happens? You'll find that I enter into a state of torpidity, sloth, drowsiness. Extremely, there's two polarity. I sit for meditation, the mind is extremely restless. With a lot of effort, I calm down the mind a little, and immediately it goes to that state of torpidity, the state of drowsiness. So what it speaks of? That though I am trying to keep the mind in a state of flow, the flow of that meditation on the object of meditation, focus on that object of meditation to enjoy the tranquility of that focus, I want to keep it. There's a sattvic state. To keep the mind alert. The mind is alert. It is not in a state of torpidity, and at the same time, it is not distracted. That's what the state of sattva is. You are alert, completely alert, but it is calm. It is just tranquil. It is not jumping from thought to thought. It is focused in one thought. Now at the beginning what happens? I find either it is full of rajas, that restlessness. When I try to stop it, it goes to the state of tamas, that state of laziness, torpidity. Many of us confuse that to be a very, very tranquil state of meditation. That we go to the state of drowsiness. As we are not aware of the sattvic state, we sometimes feel, oh, I really got a good meditation. But we will find that most of the time what happens, we are just swinging from the polarity of rajas to tamas, from tamas to rajas. That's what is happening. With a lot of effort, what happens? I can now maintain that state of focus. I can stop the distractions, the vagaries of the mind. At the same time, it is not going to the state of torpidity, the state of drowsiness. It remains in the state of focus, concentration, resulting in equanimity, tranquility. It is resulting in that, and it remains in that state. So now you will understand what that Vishuddha Sattva is. In simple words, that when I try to keep my mind focused, it is neither going to the state of restlessness, neither it is going to the state of torpidity. It maintains habitually in the state of that focus, tranquility, equanimity. So when I have attained this state, so what are the character traits which will manifest through my life? And they will manifest sequentially, one after other. First is prasada, the cheerfulness. What it speaks of? That it's a state of ekagrata. When you are focused in one thought, you have tried your best, and at last you have attained. What's the first thing happens? You will find a state of letting go ensues. That till now I was carrying a baggage always with me. The baggage of thought, worries, tensions, and I was carrying it for such a long time. I was not at all aware that I am being strained by the weight of this baggage of thoughts, worries, tensions, expectations. You will find in your life, suppose when I am just traveling, trekking with some bag on my shoulders, sometimes I don't realize that I am carrying the weight because I am carrying it for such a long time and I am exhausted. Then most probably the one who is accompanying me, he says, why not sit down and put down the weight? And then I put down the bag and I feel tremendously relieved. This weight was so habitual, even I never understood that I am actually strained because of the weight. The moment I keep it down, immediately a tremendous sense of relaxation comes. That's what happened when I have attained the state of Vishuddha Sattva. The first is that prasada, the cheerfulness, the baggage of the mind in the form of desires, worries, tensions, expectations. Everything has dropped off. That has resulted in a state of letting go. And in our scriptures, in the Yoga Sutra, they speak of a state called Videha. That if you have not attained the ultimate spiritual state, but you have attained a state of tranquility, to a certain extent you have been able to keep your mind calm, that after death you will become a Videhi. What actually it means? Actually, Videhi doesn't mean you have to die and attain the state. Even in this life, that when you enter a state of prasada, that you even forget that I have a body. The real sign of health is that you are not aware of your body. So when I am not aware of my body, that my focus on the object of my concentration is so much that all the bodily feelings has also fallen off. And that has enabled me to enter into a state of letting go, relax totally. So that's the state which has been spoken of as prasada. So this state, when it still continues, when my ekagra vritti continues, then comes swatma anubhuti. That many thought has been dissolved. It has been now, there's one thought, my ishta nishta, what is my chosen ideal, on that my mind is focused, and that has enabled me to get rid of the distractions. Now this ekagrata vritti has become the habitual state of my existence. Know it for certain, if I can continue in this state of ekagra vritti, a time will come when it will lead to the state of nirodha, the state of thoughtlessness. Why it happens? There are many ways we can explain. In a simple way, let us try to understand how it happens. In this world, everything has polarity. And whenever there is a polarity, there is a flow. That why water flows? Because there is a difference of level. As long as there is the difference of the level, water flows from the higher level to the lower level. If both the level is same, the flow stops. The moment the polarity is resolved, the flow stops. How electricity, why this current flows? Same thing. From higher potential, from the positive potential to the negative potential. From higher potential to the negative potential, the current flows. If both the ends have same potential, there won't be any current. We have, in our school, we used to do the experiment with the Wheatstone bridge. I still remember that when the reading is 0 in the galvanometer, when there is no current, there is no current, when the two ends have the same potential, then there is no current. So we will find in life where whenever the potential is resolved, then what it speaks of? It speaks of that the flow has stopped. The mind also is mind as long it is jumping from thought to thought. You'll find that constantly, that we even in modern psychology they say that in a day we think more than 60,000 thoughts. Constantly it is jumping from thought to thought, from A to B to B to C, so many thoughts. Now when I have developed ekagra vritti, it is thinking A, only one thought. As a result, when I can really do that, the mind has become so focused, there's no distraction. With a high frequency, it is thinking the same thing. So you have resolved the polarity. Mind is not jumping from thought to thought. What happens? Immediately, the mind stops. It cannot function. That's why these vrittis, why they are called vritti? Because they sustain the mind. Vritti means actually profession. Vritti doesn't mean thought waves. In Sanskrit, vritti means profession. Then why the thought waves are called vritti? Because as long as the thought waves are there, the mind is sustained. Just in our day-to-day life, what sustains me? My profession. If you are a doctor, being a doctor, you sustain yourself. Being an engineer, a person sustains himself. Being a teacher, he sustains himself. Being a businessman, he sustains himself. So whatever is this man's profession, that enables to sustain him. He is serving others, but in turn, that's the profession which helps to sustain him. So this profession is called vritti. Then why the thought waves are called vritti? Because as long the thought waves are there, the mind is there, the chitta is there. The moment these vrittis are not there, chitta is not there. As you will find that the Yoga Sutra, the second sutra, that famous sutra, oft quoted sutra, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Chitta Vritti. The profession of the chitta is the thought waves. The moment you can stop it, go to the state of thoughtlessness, the mind as if falls off. Now the mind is just like a prism, as we give that example. What is happening? that the white light falls on the prism to break into the spectrum of the 7 colors. Actually, there are infinite spectra. We see only the 7 colors. So similarly, the conscious principle in association with the mind projects this universe as if the spectrum of this name and form, this entire world. The moment the mind collapses, the entire spectrum becomes one with the absolute, with the self. And for the first time, the moment that chitta has, that from ekagra vritti, the mind has gone to the state of nirodha, we realize what we are. That the mind doesn't allow us to realize what we are. That's why the more we go deep within, a time comes when the mind subsides, and then that enables in the realization of the self. And that's the idea of swatmanubhuti. So prasada, first comes prasada. Prasada speaks of the ekagrata, that mind has only one vritti, all other distractions has fallen off, you have entered into a state of letting go. When that continues, at last the ekagra vritti also dissolves, falls off, taking you to the state of thoughtlessness, where for the time being the mind as if has stopped working and enabling you to be established in yourself. And that speaks of that swatmanubhuti, self-realization. So it is just like the projection, that I have heard in one of the lectures of one of our Swami, Sarvapriyananda, is very famous, that he gives a very nice example. That a small child was going to watch a movie with his father for the first time. And as he have never seen the movie, the father was explaining that what the movie is. That there is a screen on which, with the help of a projector, the light is projected and it creates a panorama of scenes on the screen, making the screen as if lively. But the screen is the background. So when they entered the theater, the father and the son, the movie has already started. Now the father sitting beside the son sitting beside the father constantly is asking, where is the screen? Father is saying, just in front of you. Now it's most probably the scene of Mahabharata war was being depicted there in the screen, was projected there. So seeing Krishna sitting in front of the chariot, the child asks whether Krishna is the screen. Father says, no, behind that. Is Arjun the screen? No, behind that. Oh, then the chariot? Father couldn't explain. No, behind that. Most probably the battlefield which I see in the backdrop, is that the screen? So father couldn't explain what the screen is. And then came the interval. All the projections stopped for the time being. And then the screen was palpably visible. After that, again the movie started. Now the child was silent. There was no need to explain him what the screen is. So unless in our life too, even for once, the projection hasn't stopped, it is very difficult to understand what the screen is. The swatmanubhuti speaks of that interval. That with your ekagra vritti at last, a state of nirodha came. That speaks of the intermission. And then you realize the background of all the projections that's going on. And that's the realization of the self, which with words is very difficult to explain. As Sri Ramakrishna says, Kamun ghi na jamun ghi. If you have tasted the clarified butter, you know what the taste is. But can you explain? You cannot explain. So just to give an example, Sri Ramakrishna is saying it is avang manasagocharam. You have experienced something, but you cannot describe it. It is, in the words of Swamiji, it is something like the experience of a small child who is yet to develop the skills of language. So he has the experience, but he cannot express it. So same thing is being spoken of in this picture. So you go to that realization, you experience. It is something which is noetic. You know, you're convinced. No one can ever create doubt in your mind. You have developed the Dhrira Nishchaya. Gata Samshaya, all your doubts have vanished once for all. Your Dhrira Nishchaya, you're established in that. But at the same time, if someone else asks, what is it? It is impossible to explain. Just as a mother who has just become the mother, when she meets her other friends, other girls who are yet to become mother, and the other girls ask that what it is to become a mother, what's the feeling? And she says, oh, it cannot be explained. The only thing I can say, you have to become the mother. So this is the thing, which unless you have realized, it is almost impossible to communicate. You have to realize and then you understand what it is. So that Swatmanubhuti speaks of that. The true prasada, at last it reaches to the state of Swatmanubhuti. And then what happens? Then the next three qualities are the traits that manifest in the state of Vyutthana. That through your spiritual journey, you reach the state of that samadhi, where you realize yourself. And when you come out of it, when there's Vyutthana, they come out of it, the next three these characteristic traits, they manifest. The next is Parama Prashanti. Now there is a difference when we spoke of this first prasada and Parama Prasanti. Prasada is what? That your mind is in a state of concentration, one thought. So other things have fallen off. It is a type of, you can say, escapism. That one thought is helping me to get rid of all other thoughts. I have escaped with the help of this thought from all other distractions. That is the state, that is what is meant by prasada. And what is this Parama Prashanti? That if you just do a literal translation, it may mean same. But Parama Prashanti, that extreme, that ultimate Prashanti is what? That you need not have to escape from all distractions with the help of a thought. Once you come back from the realization, you know all the thoughts are actually a projection of the self through the mind. So everything is actually the self. The self is being projected as something else. So now, even the distracted thoughts are no more a distraction from you, because you can observe them without any reaction. And that results in Parama Prashanti. So the mind reaches a state of transcendence where nothing can affect it, which comes from the realization that the world is a mere projection of Brahman. To understand this, a very nice example we can illustrate from Swami Vivekananda's talk. Swami Vivekananda is saying that in the days of a wandering monk, when he was a wandering monk, he was traveling throughout India, the length and breadth of India. So when he was in the desert, in the western India, he was in the desert area in Rajasthan. One day when he was just going from one place to the other, and it being a very hot, sultry weather, and it was very dry, and he was extremely thirsty, and he was in search of water, and suddenly he saw a huge reservoir at a distance. Now to quench his thirst, he started moving towards the reservoir. And he suddenly realized that he is not anywhere reaching near it. And suddenly it vanished. It was no more there. And then the thought came that I have read in the textbook about mirage. After studying, I thought I knew what mirage is. That in the desert you have this hallucination of this reservoir. It is a projection in the desert. And I was intellectually, I had that idea that what mirage is. And I thought I know. But today for the first time I realized that knowing and realizing, this just knowing it conceptually and realizing, there is a marked difference. That knowing is, conceptual knowledge is no knowledge at all. Unless I realize, it is no knowledge at all. Knowledge is realization. So now I realize what real mirage is. Till now it was just a conceptual knowledge. Now what's the result after the realization? Next day again I am passing through the desert. Again I see, as I am in my body, mind, senses, it's not that yesterday I have realized what mirage is. I won't see mirage anymore. Again I see the mirage. Again I see that huge reservoir. But there's a great difference. Yesterday I was dragged by it. Today it has lost the power to drag me. So now you will understand what Parama Prashanti is. Now you have transcended. That you know from your realization that this is just a mere projection. So now it has lost the power of hold upon you. It doesn't have any hold on you. It has lost the power to grab your attention. It is lost. So you are no more drawn towards it. So what happens? That though you are in the world, you are unaffected by it. The state of the first state with that prasada, you have to be in a state of one thought to escape other thing. Here, when even you are interacting with the world, you don't have to go escape to that one thought. Even if you are interacting with the world, when you come down from the realization, you see, you know it for certain that it's a mere projection. It has no as such tangible reality. It is just like a virtual reality. Can I have a real sense of pleasure with interacting with that virtual, something which is virtual? Impossible. So naturally this urge to quench my thirst, quench my this worldly thirst by getting involved with these worldly things naturally falls off. As I can clearly see, it's a mere projection. It as the world is true as Brahman, not as the world. As Brahman, it is. So I see the truth as it is. No more it can delude me by taking the projection as the reality. So that results in the Parama Prashanti. And from that, after that comes Tripti Praharsha. The superlative, the Tripti, this happiness which is of superlative degree, which is uninterrupted. How it happens? That now once this projection, you know the projection as the projection, you are established in yourself, you are not constantly chasing after the hallucinations, these worldly desires. Marichika, I am not in any more running after the mirage anymore. Then what happens? You will find happiness is ensuing from everything. It is always there. That we always make the mistake. What the mistake? That happiness comes from the fulfillment of the desire. That the desire is fulfilled, I am happy. As if the object which I was desiring, the moment I get it, I am happy. But nothing in this world has the capacity to give me even the slightest fragrance of happiness. There's, as Shankaracharya says, Gandha Matra. There's even this little, what to speak of really enjoying. That even that when I have not tasted the food, just the flavor, that itself makes me happy. So now Shankaracharya is saying, what to speak of real happiness, even it cannot give you that flavor of happiness. This world doesn't have that capacity. All the happiness comes from the self. That when the desire is fulfilled, the happiness which I get is not for the object which I have got, but for the time being, the self has manifested, and that's why I feel happiness. You may say, how? That Swamiji gives a very nice example. That our mind is just like a lake in which the thoughts, the desires, the concerns, the feelings, everything are like the waves. They're the waves. Now, as long as the water is turbulent, it is having wave, I cannot see the bottom of the lake. The bottom of the lake is visible when the water is calm, transparent. Now, Swamiji is saying that our mind is just like that lake, and the bottom of that lake is our real nature, which is Sat Chit Ananda Swarupa. Sat Swarupa, what it speaks of? Sat means that which is Trikal Avadhita, whose existence cannot be interrupted by any phase of time, past, present, future. It is. It is in the eternal present. That means Sat. Is that Sat then something which is just inert? As sometimes in the science we find that idea that consciousness is the product of the intermingling of the so-called matter. Somehow accidentally it has emanated from certain interactions of the matter. So here Vedanta says no. that the ultimate fundamental principle behind the entire existence, the only fundamental principle, that thing which only exists, is the consciousness. Everything else is the epiphenomenon. So consciousness is not the epiphenomenon. The world is the epiphenomenon. The consciousness is being projected as this world. So Chit means that ultimate reality which is eternal is not something inert. It is Chit Swarupa. It is consciousness. And that consciousness again is not something which is vacillating constantly like a pendulum from happiness to misery. That as is our experience in our life, that if I take my present limited existence, I find I am not Sat. I was born at a certain point of time, I'm going to die at a certain point of time, and even while living, I'm going through transformation. I was young, I'm becoming old. So it doesn't speak of Sat Swarupata. To negate this idea of limited individuality, Scripture says, no, you are Sat. The real nature is something which is unchanging, which was, which is, which will be. And again, that real nature is not something inert, that somehow by the interaction of matter, the consciousness has developed. You are Chit Swarupa. And then the doubt comes, okay, I understand that I am Sat Swarup, I am Chit Swarup. But how can I be Ananda Swarup? I find that I am aware of happiness, momentary happiness. But again, I am dejected. Again, I am sore, I am just full of dukkha. That life is constantly vacillating from the ebb of happiness to the trough of suffering. Constantly is going on. Then how can you say that the self, ultimate self, is in the state of perpetual bliss? So here, very nicely Swami says, what happens? That in our life, at each and every moment, we are aware of our Sat Swarupata and Chit Swarupata. What's that? That I am, I exist. I never doubt that. I'm always aware of that. Whether I am happy, whether I am in misery, whatever may be the state, that I exist, I am never forgetful about it. So I am always aware of my Sat Swarupata, I am aware of my Chit Swarupata. But what happens when my mind is full of desires? Then there's as if that lake of mind is having so many waves. Then it filters, these waves filters out only the Ananda Swarupata. The bliss I don't experience. Sat Swarupata, Chit Swarupata is always experienced. The bliss is not experienced. But the moment a desire is fulfilled, one intense desire is fulfilled. I had many desires, of which there was one intense desire. That intense desire shadowed all the desire. And the moment that desire is fulfilled, for the time being, mind is calm. A letting go has ensued, relaxed. And then the Ananda Sarupata, which was filtered out because of all those distractions, that now wells up, that now manifests as if through our body-mind complex. It manifests. And because of ignorance, I think the object has given me happiness. But actually, the moment I keep my mind calm, the happiness comes from within. It wells up from within. Welling up is this very, very nice term. That if I pump out all the water from a well, when the well is empty, the next day morning I come, I find again it is full of water. I did not have to pour water from outside. The groundwater comes and again fills the well. So the water is already there. It is something intrinsic. It comes and again fills the well. Similarly, the happiness is something intrinsic. It is within. It wells up. So that's the idea of Tripti Prahasha. Then what happens? In our day-to-day life, the happiness which we experience is the happiness because of the self, not because of the world. But as we mistake, we can never understand what the source of happiness. We look outside as if these are the objects which is going to give me happiness. We are in constant chase after the desires. We constantly chase after them. For the timing it is fulfilled, a momentary happiness we get, again we start desiring. But one who has attained this Parama Prashanti, that he has understood that this chasing after the desire is fruitless. It is after like chasing after the mirage. It is a mere projection. So he has stopped chasing after the desire. So his mind is always at peace. So in the Upanishad, one word comes again and again. It's Dhira, Dhira. The one who is calm, quiet. So one who is calm and quiet, whose mind is not vacillating, is not going to this turmoils of this unending waves of thoughts, tensions, worries, expectations. Is always calm. Then what happens? The happiness becomes a constant factor. It is always there, the happiness of superlative degree. He is always in that state of perpetual bliss. Nothing can break that bliss. So we give the example of those fishermen. In India we see that there are these poor fishermen who have this small boat with which they go to the deep waters of the ocean for fishing. But first they have to break the barriers of the waves. The waves are always near the shore. If you go a bit deep into the ocean, the waves are not there. It is calm. So what they do with a small boat, they try again and again to break those barriers of waves. They fail. They are thrown by the waves. Again they try. Second time, third time, fourth time, and at last, with assiduous effort, at last, they break this barrier of wave and enter into the calm water of the ocean, and there they enjoy the fishing without any interruption. So that's what is being spoken of as the Tripti Praharsha. That we, through our spiritual journey, as long as the mind is turmoil, we have to wade through these waves to break this wave barrier. But deep within, the self is tranquility, nothing else. It is tranquil. Once we reach there, now you can enjoy the tranquility of the self without getting interrupted by the strong waves, the turmoil of the waves. So there are so many nice ways. There's the story which I heard in the lectures of Swami Sridharanandaji, that many times he used to repeat. Even now he repeats many times, that a king had a minister, very efficient minister. He was a very efficient. And now he developed some renunciation. And he wanted to renounce his responsibilities as a minister and go as a recluse to some place for diving deep within him in meditation. So when he asked the permission from the king was not permitting, because he was so much dependent on him. He was a very efficient minister. But when at last the king found that he is very insistent, then king had to release him at last. So the minister was released. Where he went, no one knew. Years passed, many years. Now one day the king in disguise was just roaming in his own kingdom, and he came to almost to the fringe of the boundary of his kingdom, from where the forest starts. And he entered a bit into the forest. And then he suddenly was surprised to see it was his minister who was sitting under a tree. He was reclining to the trunk of the tree, and his legs were spread out as if he was fully relaxed. His hands were folded and the legs were spread out. So the king was a bit surprised, and he thought most probably if he goes near that minister, he will recognize him. See, he goes near the minister, stands in front of him, but he finds no reaction. The minister doesn't stand up in reverence as it was the norm when he was the minister, when he was handling his responsibilities, to respect the king, to show that respect, that you have to stand up, show your reverence. But now he saw the minister has no no sense of reverence. He still, after seeing the king, still he was spreading his legs, and with his folded hands he was reclining to the trunk of the tree. The king felt a bit hurt. It's okay that he has now resigned from the work. He is no way under me, but he is supposed to have that little sense of reverence. Has he lost everything? And so sarcastically asked, that is in Hindi that word is, Pao Phelaya Kab se, from when have you learned to sit like this with your legs outstretched? The minister unperturbed replied, Haath sameta jab se, from where I have folded my hands. I don't stretch it out, I want this, I want that. All these desires has fallen off. I have folded my hands. Now I have nothing to worry. My legs have been stretched out. So what a wonderful example. That's why the monks are called this Maharaj. Maharaj means the king of the king. But these monks are beggars. They have no money. Why they are called the king of the kings? Because richness is not how much wealth you have. Richness is how much you have gone beyond your wants. That why I have lot of rich, that so that my wants are fulfilled. But with all our rich, do we ever feel that our wants have been fulfilled? We want more, we want more. But the so-called sannyasi who sees the world as a mere projection has attained the state of parama prashanti. For him what happens? There is no more want. Though he has no wealth, he has no more want. That's the paradox. The more you have wealth, the more you have want. If you can realize, relate to the spiritual dimension of existence, or all your wants fall off. And the moment there is no want, that speaks of your richness, not how much wealth you have. With all your wealth, if you go on asking for things, that speaks of your poverty. And if in spite of having nothing, if I go beyond all wants, that speaks of the richness. So that's why a sannyasi who has reached the state of the tranquility is called Maharaj, king of the kings, because he has gone beyond all want. And that speaks of that tripti praharsha. And then the last thing is Paramatmanistha. What it speaks? Once you have realized the self, you come down from the realization. You are never in any way distracted by this world of name and form, this phenomenal existence. Because you see the same self, the footprints of the same self everywhere. There's a projection. It's a projection. The world is a projection of the self. The entire existence is as if the footprint following which you can reach the self. They speak of the footprint of the self. They're the projection of the self. So seeing the self in everything. So what happens? He is now established without break in Paramatman alone. As a spiritual aspirant, only when I am meditating with the closed eyes, I think I am in communion with the self. The moment I open my eyes, I feel I am again in the world of distraction. As Swamiji used to say, don't seek God, see Him. Don't close your eyes and seek God. Once you have went to the realization, with your open eyes, you can see Him everywhere. So that's the Paramatmanistha, that now that to remain in the spiritual state has become 24/7. There's no interruption. So that's the state of Paramatmanistha, being established without break in Paramatman alone. So he enjoys the bliss of Nirvikalpa Samadhi when he is in Samadhi, and when he comes down from that, he sees the world soaked in consciousness and consciousness alone. As has been spoken of in the Aparokshanubhuti, Yatra Yatra Manoyati Brahmana Tatra Darshanat. You see the same Brahman everywhere. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, that in the rainy season, the way the entire grass field is soaked in water, I see the entire world in the same way as if soaked in consciousness. I see the consciousness everywhere. Consciousness is peeping through each and every name and form. And the words of Ramakrishna, Uki Jhuki Marche. Chaitanya Uki Jhuki Marche. It is just popping up from everything in this world. So consciousness, because that's the substratum, that is the only thing which exists. So that's the idea which has been spoken of as the Paramatma Nishtha. So now there is no interruption. Even when you are interacting with the world, you are still established in the self. There is no, as such, interval, break in your awareness of the Absolute. So these are the traits of the Vishuddha Sattva. When your Sattva has reached the state of extreme purity, it takes you to all this realization. So this Sattva is as if just like this rocket propellant, from where the rocket is propelled to the space. So it is like that. The Sattva takes you, it helps you to transcend all the so-called the bonds by which we have been gravitated down. We have been gravitated down to this worldly existence. it helps us to transcend that and enjoy the state of perpetual bliss, which has been spoken of as the state of Jivan Mukti, that will be spoken of in the Vivekachudamani, almost in the last. That what's the aim of life? That this aim of life is Jivan Mukti Sukha Prapti Hetave Janmadharana. That sometimes, that most of us think that all the worldly pleasures are the be-all and end-all of our existence. Swamiji very nicely has mentioned that with all our technology, with all our effort, can we really enjoy the world with our senses? We are not equipped for that. You just see the power of, the tremendous power of smell the dog has. The way it eats, it relishes the food. Its senses are very, very intense. With all our technology, with all our gadgets, we can never enjoy the world as intensely as the animal does. The way they smell, the way they taste, the way they hear. The birds can hear even a very low frequency sound. Sitting here in my ashram, on the ashram, they can hear the rumbling of the waves in the ocean. For them, the world can be more noisy because hearing is very keen. So we with all our technology can never think of enjoying the world with that intensity as the animal does. But what's the uniqueness of the human being? That we can realize the self. And after realizing the self, we can enjoy the state of liberation even while living. We need not have to die and go to some other state of existence in this life. And that's the uniqueness of the human birth. And that's the uniqueness, that's the only goal of the human birth that will be asserted in Vivekachudamani almost in the concluding phase. What is that? Jivan Mukti Sukha Prapti Hetave Janmadharana. The only purpose of human birth is to enjoy the bliss of the state of Jivan Mukti. And that's being indicated by these traits which has been spoken of in this Vishuddha Sattva. You enjoy the state of that perpetual bliss even while living. You need not have to die to go to some different state of existence like heaven or some other locus. Here itself, you enjoy the state of liberation. And that's the purpose of human birth. So that's been being spoken of by all these traits which has been spoken of in this sloka, the 119th sloka. So next, till now we have covered the gross body, the Sukshma Sharira, and now Shankaracharya will go to explain the Karana Sharira. Why is he explaining all these things? After explaining, he is negating them one by one. That we are constantly wrongly identifying ourselves either with the gross body or with the Sukshma Sharira or with the Karana Sharira. But they are just the various layers of ignorance which we have to transcend to realize ourselves. So now that's why he's in details describing all these various Sharira. So next he will take the Karana Sharira, that what it is, and that Karana Sharira is not ourself, that we have to transcend that. Beyond that is the self. So for that he will take into the discussion, bring into the discussion the Karana Sharira, describe it before negating it. First he will describe and then negate. So that we will take up again in the next class. So with this we stop our discussion today. Thank you all. Namaskars.